Okay, so today we're going to be changing out the rear clip on this 65 GTV. But I want to take an opportunity to show you a few things that are probably things you haven't seen before. This is a factory original rear clip for a 4-headlight 2-liter car. Now, in these, the factory clips, they're a little more complete than the ones you get today in reproductions. You know, this portion here is welded in just like it is from the original factory. The lines on the original ones are a little sharper, a little crisper. But essentially, other than that, that's probably where the value ends because they're a little lighter weight than the reproduction stuff. Now, this is a reproduction model. And yes, the lines aren't quite as sharp here and up here. They're a little more rounded. That means they're probably coming from either a rubber stamped mold or a mold that just wasn't as well executed as the original was. It's not necessarily a bad thing. These are little nuances most people wouldn't notice anyway. Anyhow, but what is a positive about these reproduction models is these are heavier. They're made out of a higher weighted steel than the original. And I'm not opposed to that at all. I think that's actually a good thing. So anyhow, what's going to happen today is Kyle's going to be changing out the rear clip on this red GT, and we're going to show you some of the process of how to do it. We're also going to point out some of the knowing issues that you can see if you really pay attention. If you're buying one of these cars, you can see some of the things that are telling you about the history of the car.
Alright, so changing out this rear clip, what we're going to start out with is we notice that there's excessive body filler down here for previous damage, as this bumper mount here is not true as this one over here, as well as there's some spot welds down here that should be here from the factory that you can tell is more than likely covered up by body filler.
So we have our reference points. We have this soft drawn curvature that is part of this fender line on the inner railing system. We have this that should be continuously soft drawing curvature here, and it's also mirrored here. However, when you look on this side, to give you an idea of what's going on here, you see a slight buckle right here. Not a big one, but a slight one. But you also see that this rail is absolutely straight. That tells me whoever fixed the damage on this car whenever it was in its accident or whatever had happened to it didn't quite understand how the body construction is one of these. When you look at this roof line here, this is curved, soft drawn curve. The rail system should match that, and it doesn't. This is absolutely straight as can be. I have a feeling somebody probably put a level underneath this one, working this to be level, instead of understanding that it had to have that curve to it for it to fit appropriately. This is where the trunk lid being on the car is imperative, because you need to build the car to the trunk lid. When these cars were originally constructed, that's how it was done. The trunk lid and the hood were put on, and the fenders are set to match the hood and trunk, not the other way around. So when I set this, I should see this curvature and this curvature match. If this is the original trunk lid to this fender, it should be a uniform experience. When you come to this side, however, you can't see it because it's on the opposing side of you, this is curved just like it should be, so this fender is beam straight, and that is not right. So we're going to take care of that.
Okay, so since the last clip, what I went ahead and did was I did brace the inside of either fenders to keep those from bowing in once I do make the initial cut. And also what I did was I went ahead and drilled out the spot welds along the existing clip and the T-bar back here, and then along down here as well. This is for the trunk floor pan itself. So once I go ahead and separate these rivets, spot welds along with these spot welds down here, I'll go ahead and make my cut to go ahead and remove the clip itself. And if you can see right here, the angle from the T-bar that I actually welded in for a brace, you see that this side right here is much higher than this side over here because it tapers down. So that's going to be one of the things that we're definitely going to have to pay attention to and fix during this process.
right about now, you can sense the value in what we're trying to achieve here. We kept the T-brace in place. Why? Because it's an excellent reference point for when we put the new one back on. This car was lightly stuffed at some point over here. It's not a massive collision. It was, you know, I'll call it a shunt. Anyway, so this area right here is slightly bent up, not a whole lot, but that is how they sealed the trunk up. And it's important that the trunk stays somewhat airtight, because if you don't, the fumes from the gas tank, the trunk runs in a vacuum. The fumes from the gas tank and everything else is going to get pulled into the cabin. So you're going to smell that stuff, and body shops know that. That's why, wow, that is a lot of sealant was used to seal this up, because this was stuffed, this was fixed, but this was still stuffed. So they sealed it up with this urethane, you know, so they at least have a airtight trunk space. But the bumper mount, it's bent, it's pushed forward. That's why the rear panel has so much body filler here, because this is about a ½ inch away from the rear of the cell panel. Anyhow, Kyle did a real good job cutting all this away. Now it's time to straighten this out, because we have it out, fix it, and put the new panel back on.
Okay, so what we're doing right now is we have the porta power applying pressure on the trunk pan itself. What we're trying to do is actually get the base of the pan higher than usual, so we can work this high spot down. So that's why we have this porta power here. Like I said, it's applying pressure up, and what we're doing is basically trying to work this high ridge down. Now, it's not nothing you want to do with one complete blow at a time. You kind of want to work it back and forth. So that's what you can see I was doing. So we'll try to work this section, and then we'll probably move the porta power a little bit over and work it as we go along until it's all pretty much square.
Kyle was saying, before he started doing all this work, he was where this metal was driven back. Now it's all been pulled forward. Now we seem to have a pretty good straight line from this bumper mount to that bumper mount. But we won't truly know until we put the rear clip on, so now we're going to see what it does. Right now our only reference concern is that this floor sits into the stamp out of the rear apron, and these bumper holes are fairly close to the original mount holes of the actual replacement skins. We'll see what that means in a minute. There. Yeah, it's sitting really close to the dropping right here. That fold that's in the trunk floor should be sitting right against this, and that's why you have resistance hold right here. Well, it's replacing the rim. All right, so once we do the finished cutouts, these are dropping real close, but right now that floor is resting right against here, right where it should be. Not bad. Not bad.
Cool. All right, so what we got here is we got the new clip mounted up, and this side here, this is what you want to see. It's flush, it fits good, it fits nice, the contours are nice, along with the new clip. This is what you're after right here. Now see, this is what we have to work with. As you can see, the previous repair before, all they did was just cake mud on here, and you can see that the original sheet metal is nowhere even close to where it needs to be to mount up to this new clip. And you can't see it right now, but up on top of here as well, this area is flattened out, so we're gonna have to get that contour back as well. So what we're gonna have to do is hammer and dolly all this out and metal work this the best we can to go ahead and get this to meet the new clip and sit as flush as it can so the repair looks seamless. Alright, so as you can see now, we have the clip clamped onto place, and from the previous last time you can see that the gap here is much better. It's much more flush. What we had to do here was we had to clamp it, and we actually had to spoon it out from the inside, drive that metal back out to meet flush with that new clip. So we got that. This is looking much better than what it is, what it did before. So next what we're going to go ahead and do is we have it all clamped down. Before we commit it though, what we want to go ahead and do is we have it marked up. We'll go ahead and from the inside here, draw a line, mark our line, scribe it so we know where we need to be for our resistance welds, for our plug welds. That way we're not too high or too low of this trunk pan itself. And then we'll go ahead and remove the clip itself, prepare it, and we'll get the body and the clip itself ready to go ahead and commit that piece to the car. Now if you remember, originally the pan itself was so pushed far back from the original clip. So what we had to do was we spooned it closer, spooned it flat so it was true all the way across, and then we clamped it on the bottom. So now what we have is a much tighter fit, much truer as to factory, and a much cleaner install overall. All right, so what we have here is the new clip welded into place. What I went ahead and did was weld it into the existing trunk floor pan itself. I didn't commit it along the sides or on top just yet. That way it's still pliable, and we can maneuver it and position it need be as we work some of this metal out from the inside to meet that and create more of a flush fit. And then, so once we get that all straight and this metal conform to the new clip itself, then we'll go ahead and start committing on the side.
Okay, so Kyle's going through the other side, getting that one anchored up. This side has proved to be somewhat difficult, not only because previous repairs were somewhat poor in their completion, if you will, but we have the original factory weld that somebody has welded over top of. That means that entire area has been work hardened, and that makes it very difficult to move that metal. And what we're trying to avoid doing is cutting this section of the car out to alleviate all that tension from all the hardened steel being welded over twice. So with that said, we're going through the process of squaring up the rear end of this car. What has proved to be a little more difficult than normal is, again, this side of the car is flat. That side of the car has its proper curvature. We can't let that go. We weren't trying to end up painting the rear clip altogether, but in fact it looks like that's exactly what we're going to end up doing, have to paint the rear clip. This is a proverbial can of worms that has been opened. Part of our issues is that the paint is cracking right here and here through the process of alleviating that pressure and cutting the old one away. As soon as we did that, the metal starts to shift and move. So we have shaped all this old metal back. Now what you can't really see because you're looking at things in 2 dimensions is that we have effectively about a 1/4 inch of body filler built up on this rear quarter panel. Now, if you're being a little smug and you think, boy, my car isn't that way, I challenge you to look at that again. Very few of these cars have no rear end damage. This is why. You got to think about a car that was in this country especially, that was running around on 4-wheel disc brakes with an incredible braking distance or short braking distance compared to all the American cars of the early and late 60s that would have been on the road with this at the same time. Those cars effectively weighed twice as much as this. Those cars, for the most part, were on drum brakes, all 4 drum brakes. They didn't have the braking distance that our little Alphas did. So therefore, an awful lot of these cars have been rear-ended. Anyhow, it's a little bit of a struggle. It has become far more complicated than we had hoped it to be. But at the end of the day, you're committed. You have to do what you have to do. You can't simply just bolt something on, slap on a weld, fill it up with body filler, and send it on down the road. People don't like that. When these cars are becoming as valuable as they are anymore, you can't get away with some nonsense like that anymore.
Okay, what we got going on today here is we're going to change the headliner out in the Super. Right here is the old headliner, and you can see how it's stained, and you got watermarks right here, which the old insulation that it came with is like a fiberglass type of insulation, and it holds that moisture, and then when it dries, it kind of seeps down around the headliner here, the edges, and it turns it into this yellow stainish rings here that you can see on the sides of it. And what the original came with were these snake bite holes. That's the type of headliner this is. And you can get different variations. Some don't have it. Some have different kind of type of holes in there. But these right here are the original ones that you want to look for when you're getting a headliner. Over here is the new one that we are going to put in. And you can see it does have that same pattern of the snake bite. And underneath you can tell that the vinyl here that they made it with is really close to the original stuff they have there. This one here is out of Classic Alpha. And they make the original style headliners with that snake bite in there, and the material underneath, as you can tell, is not, most vinyls have like a furriness underneath. This one doesn't, so it makes it real pliable, easy to work with, and it's nice. There's other kits out there that have a cheaper type of vinyl, but this is more close to original, so these are the ones you kind of want to look for when you're looking for replacing your headliner. Now once you get the old headliner out, you got to remove all that foam or that fiberglass insulation that was in there, and you want to replace it with something that's a little bit more better and stuff nowadays. This is a tar type sound deadening with insulation in it, and what it does is it insulates that. It's real thin, gives you that nice sound deadening quality, and it'll last a very long time. Alright, well I finished installing that headliner we were talking about yesterday. And the main thing I want to talk about right now is that sound deadening I put in there, that insulated sound deadening. Not only does it keep the heat out, but it does a remarkable job on doing what it's supposed to do. This one doesn't have it, and I don't know if you can hear it on the camera, but you can hear that vibration through it on the roof. Now we'll step over the one with that sound deadening. There's nothing, it's just a thug type sound, and it's very quiet. You can hardly hear anything at all. And here's a shot of the headliner after it's all installed. The only thing left to do is the side door pillars, but that's what a finished headliner should look like.
You can't help but to look like the bad guy in a situation like this, but that's not what we're trying to do. At the end of the day, we have to own whatever it is we're touching to some degree. And the only way we can ensure that things are going to be in at least a acceptable and decent level is that you have to remove some of this excessive filler, finish the metal out properly, and then we're going to skim coat it. But the process is here that I want to talk about. There's no primer on this metal. This was grounded, then body filler was put on top of it, and kept going on top of it until they got the transitional shape they were looking for. Now we're going to blow all this area out some more. So this is going to cut out up here, body filler. And we're going to come back here. We're not trying to open up Pandora's box. We're not trying to recreate this car. It's just here for a simple fix. It got complicated very fast. So when we remove what filler we are going to remove, this entire area is first going to get put into an epoxy primer to preserve that steel. Then we will proceed to finish metal bumping, making the metal as straight as possible. And then we'll put that light skim coat of filler on there. Then the primers, we're sanding the primers. Then we put on what's called the surfacer, which is a little thicker primer. Sand that. Then we'll put on the silver, the color, and the clear. It really is a great 65 GTV. It really is. It's so surprising sometimes how bad this stuff can get.
Alright, so now we have our rear clip fully welded into place. As you can see now we have our deck lid. This is why it's important to keep the deck lid on the vehicle itself while you're doing this process. You can see now that we have our gaps are uniform around the deck lid itself, and as well as right here with the new clip, it sits flush and true all the way around. So that's definitely what you're looking for when you replace this rear clip, and that's why it's important to keep the deck lid, like I said, on. So now we have the temporary bracing removed from the inside of the trunk, and from this point it'll go on the bodywork and then on the color.
Alright, so what we're doing right now, this is the car that we just replaced the rear clip on. And we're not trying to dive into too much about this car, but we do need to correct some things about it that are just not right. This rear section, Ariel's already removed a great deal of the body filler, and now we're just going back and we're doing what's called the shrinking technique without using hammers and dollies. If I were to use a hammer and dolly to try to shrink some of this, what body filler that is here that we are not trying to attack is going to start breaking away. It's just creating more work. And this car is not in that point in its life. It's a minimal repair is what we're trying to do. It's a minimal quality repair is what we're trying to do. So anyway, so what we're doing now is called the shrinking technique. Now we can tell that this car has went through some degree of damage, obviously, because I can see brass welding right here, which is something we haven't done in over 20 years. And we can see where body filler has just been laid up over some deep crests. So we're going to be removing some of this stuff, but only if we can do it without actually having to hammer on this thing. Because the last thing we want to do is this body filler to break up. So right now what we're doing is what's called the shrinking gun technique, and this is basically this is a brass or a copper lead that when you place it over something and you pull the trigger, what it does is it heats that metal and collapses it just the size of that. So we can move metal very safely with a minimal amount of vibration or stress in the body and really kind of start shrinking some of these high spots. If you look right here, that right there is a high spot. We're trying to get as much of this body filler off of this car as possible. So we're going to go back and try to shrink this. The nice thing about this device is the body filler that is around it isn't going to break off because it doesn't get hot enough for it to burn it. Anyway, so once we start establishing some shrinking, you can see some black areas here, black area right there, that's coming from this. We take this file, which is an adjustable compound file, and we're able to drag across the surface, and where we see file marks, that's where we're telling them the highs and lows are at, so we can really fine tune this metal and make a lot out of it. So I'm going to get going on this. Right now my focus is just this area because it's pretty high. So when I use a file over it, if most of this black stuff stays there, that means I'm below grade. Now it's a workable surface. So now I'm going to see what I got left. Again, this is the area. Now I've adjusted the curvature on this to match that. Right now the only thing you're seeing fall away is the body filler. It's too high. Okay, so now I'm hitting all the areas around it which are in relatively decent angle, but the shrinkage hasn't disappeared. So that means it's below that file line. That's what we want. So I'm done messing with this, I'm done messing with that. Now I'm coming after this and only this. Now, only very little of it is still sitting high. I still have a halo effect where some of the heating is still on the perimeter. So I need to identify that without overfiling this. This has come down quite a bit. I just need to get a little bit right here and I'm done with this. Now this buzz box tool, you can set how long you want it to heat. I have it on half second right now. That feels pretty good. Pretty much done.